Thank you for your patience. Now we will begin Circular Economy times Startup. First, I would like to introduce our moderator and speakers for this session. For our moderator, we have Ms. Sakano Akira, ICEF Steering Committee, Representative Director, Zero Waste Japan, Co-founder, Green Innovation, Director and CSO, Ecomid Company Limited, Japan. And for our speakers, we have Mr. Rajat Verma, CEO and founder, Lohum, India. Ms. Karen Cheah, founder and CEO, Alterpacks Private Limited, Singapore. And Ms. Sann Carrière, founder and director, Orobo, Singapore, the Netherlands. So now I would like to ask Ms. Sakano to moderate this session. So Ms. Sakano, please start whenever you're ready.
So good afternoon, everyone. Thank you very much for coming and still staying until the last part of the forum. Yeah, thank you very much. And then I'm really happy to finally host this circular economy as a topic here in the conference. And I'm sure that you're going to enjoy this. But anyway, just to set up the scene, basically, of course, we talked a lot about energy transition, like how do we make sure that the sustainability in that part will bring us in the society. But at the same time, like when we look at the GHG emission, normally, we can cut probably the half of it by energy transition, but the rest of the half is coming from, production and consumption. So that's why, of course, resource security-wise, but at the same time, how do we make sure this circular transition happens in the society is very, very critical. So that's why I'm here to, bring one of the most innovative people in this region to talk about how can we make sure that this will be happening in the society. So this session is not only about the circular economy, but also the startups. So we are with the three key leading startups from Asian regions, and we are really happy to share their knowledge, their experiences, but at the same time, what are the challenges and how can we actually tackle by the collaboration or multi-stakeholders coalition within the society. So anyway, to start with, I'd like to bring all the speakers to kind of share a little bit about what they exactly do and what are the key innovations they are bringing into the society as an introduction. So Rajat, please.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I represent Lohum. And we are in the business of recycling all critical mineral-bearing scrap, such as batteries, lithium-ion batteries in particular, electronic waste, particularly waste containing rare earth magnets, catalytic converters, catalysts, and other kinds of industrial waste, which has critical mineral-bearing scrap. Should I go through the presentation right now? All right. So I'm told I've got 3 minutes, so I'll try to walk through this fairly quickly. So these are the different critical minerals. Most countries across the world have defined a set of critical minerals which generally overlap. I think most of you would be familiar with the range of elements on the periodic table which are called critical minerals. We need to create a circular economy around critical minerals. Critical minerals drive collectively over $40 trillion of the economy. So pretty much affect every field out there. The circular economy will result in a lot of great outcomes, including energy usage, emission reduction, and water savings, all of which are critical goals for all of us. We as a company started back in 2018, and in the last 7 years have been able to establish a reasonable leadership in India with over a 90% share of the Indian critical mineral scrap market. We've got about 12 facilities in India dealing with different kinds of critical minerals, such as lithium, cobalt, nickel, etc. That's a quick snapshot of our geographical presence and all the different kinds of metals that we are working with. Our journey to sustainability has been thus so far, starting in 2018, initially started out with batteries, and then over the last couple of years have expanded the breadth of our portfolio to various other critical minerals and various other kinds of scrap, which have allowed us now to become comfortable with dealing with any kind of critical mineral-bearing scrap and providing solutions to that to the industry. Some of the key sectoral challenges that we've encountered that continue to be problems that we solve, that we try to solve for, and where we are always looking for other startups to come up with creative ideas to collaborate and find solutions. Low rate of formal collection. I don't think it's a surprise to anyone who's been in the broader waste collection industry. How to have processing which is A, environmentally friendly, but two, at the same time, cost competitive with primary materials when you're actually processing materials that are coming from mine. And then finally, the end output of recycling, how does it integrate with the downstream? How does it get reused in the new products that are being made? These three remain three challenges where we apply baby steps, where we've been taking incremental steps to improving them all the time. But that gives you a quick sense of the rates in India, and these are still very, very early days for everyone. India has been putting out a lot of interesting policy drivers, and we are focusing on that, and I can talk about that later, which will aid in this program. I do believe there's a lot of scope for partnership between India and Japan, and again, I can talk about this in the later part of the session. So thank you very much, and hope to have a meaningful discussion here.
Thank you very much. Maybe we quickly go through, firstly, one by one, then come back to you. I'm sure everyone's quite interested in how we can definitely achieve the critical mineral circulation in the society, and then also in terms of the battery. We have so much issues here in Japan as well in terms of collection. So next, Karen, please.
Good afternoon. So I'm Karen, the founder and CEO of Alterpacks. We're an advanced materials startup. And our raw material that we use is spent wheat. It's something that Japan has a lot of. And the thing that we do with the spent wheat is our technology allows us to extract 100% plant fiber from it. And with that, our technology allows us to create a special additive. This additive is 100% plastics-free, no PFAS, and you add it to existing pulp and paper manufacturing lines, creating this new material that has very high temperature tolerance. So Alterpacks is not a packaging company. What we are, essentially, is a materials company that is changing the circular economy in terms of how we approach materials. The material is being used right now in food and beverage. So actually, some of the fine hotels in Singapore and across APAC are using the Alterpacks material. You will come across it, but you may not recognize it because you think it's paper or cardboard. But this Alterpacks material is used to hold hot and oily foods. It can actually go from minus 18 degrees Celsius right up to 260 degrees. Right now in Australia, they're using the trays to bake directly. So if you purchase an Alterpacks tray, you can actually bake a cake, put it in the oven, and then serve it directly from the tray. And of course, we are replacing the plastics used in supermarkets. But most importantly, Singapore is an aging society. And we had a very interesting challenge by one of the local hospitals. And that was with plastic medical cups being used. They are ubiquitous. There's a few million of that being used just in one hospital in 1 year. But in an aging society with arthritic hands and with every patient in a hospital will take an average of 15 tablets. And that 15 tablets goes into a plastic medical cup this size. But their hands are stuck. They only like it this way. But the nurses need visibility. They need to be able to see the 15 tablets. And so what we have had to do is we had to create a plastic medical cup alternative with the Alterpacks material that can take into consideration an aging population, reduce the use of plastics, absolutely cut it out altogether with the Alterpacks material. And that's what we're doing right now. And so if you'd like to connect with us, this is my contact number. And I hope that it will be a solution that we bring to the marketplace.
Thank you, Karen. That was very interesting and also inspiring. Just a quick question for you before moving on. For that material, it's all compostable. So how do we, do the collection or, circulation part of it?
It's 100% home compostable because it's 100% plant fiber. And if you actually collect it, you can actually use it again. But human nature is such that we all like convenience, don't we? So as much as we encourage people to wash it and reuse it 3 to 4 times, chances are you will actually just throw it away. But it will actually, you can tear it up and put it into the plants and pots, and it will be good for the soil.
So it's also home compostable in a way?
100% home compostable.
Yeah, that's also very much difference. I'm sure that everyone's quite familiar with it in this audience, but home compostable level, industrial compostable level, totally different, right? For the industrial compostable level, you actually need a proper collection, large scale of the industrial composting site, and etc. So it's a huge difference. But thank you. So Sann, it's yours.
Minasama, konnichiwa.
Good afternoon.
I'm Sann, and I'm very, very honored to be back here again. I was born in the Netherlands, moved to Japan in 2006, before setting up my company in Singapore in 2017. So I'm very happy to see that people that have been working in this space for so long are still pushing onwards. And I would love to bring digital innovation to the circular economy materials transition. So the name of my company, Orobo, and what we do is we create digital product passport. So in order to understand what is the impact of a product on that level of granularity, we need to be able to go back into the supply chain all the way up to sourcing, through production, and all the way through end of life. So we need a system for traceability and for calculating that impact. So that is what we are building. We are doing that as a compliance tool. Both China and European Union have already adopted new regulation. Every product and material will need this product identity in the form of a digital product passport by 2030. So we are working with mostly the very polluting industries to make sure that their data is high quality, and we log those data on blockchain. So we make use of these new technologies to advance the circular economy. Then we see ourselves as a neutral clearinghouse for sustainability data. How can we make sure that international parties, especially under geopolitical tension, trust each other's data? Singapore is ideally positioned to do so. So we work deep in Chinese supply chains, make sure that we can find a way to interpret that data and then deliver that on European compliance level. Then finally, what I see happening in the region is that both Korea and Japan are at similar levels of very high-tech supply chains, logistics, and they are ideal next markets to pick up this kind of thinking. So my invitation would be to really think about how can we help advance Japan into adopting digital product passports. If you are curious to see what it looks like, there is one QR code that leads to the product. The other one leads to my LinkedIn profile. So happy to share more about how we operate this. Thank you.
Thank you, Sann. Maybe for the ones who's not that familiar with the background of the DPP, maybe you can summarize a little bit about, like, how's the, European policy making is like pushing towards all this ESPL and then DPP as a tool. So for them to better understand more of the context? Yeah.
Yes, of course. So this thinking started as part of the Green Deal, and that has different levels of execution. So next to company reporting, there are the CBAM, so every carbon that will be imported into the European Union, but then we also need a verification method on the product or material level. That's where the eco-design for sustainability, sustainable product regulation came in, ESP. One of the key elements in this regulation is called DPP. So every time someone references to DPP as an item, it's related to compliance. It used to be a European initiative, but what we've seen since April of this year is that also China is fully on board. So we would have both a Chinese language DPP and a European that would align in order to facilitate sustainable international trade.
Thank you very much. And then also maybe some of us here are in the audience are from the different industry, right? So in terms of like which industries are pushing through the faster, and then also like in terms of the regulation cap, which will come fast, and then maybe they are quite interested in that context though, if you have any insights on that.
Yes, I believe that we are all much looking forward to enforcement to start. So the latest details on enforcement are still waiting to be published this year. We know that batteries are the first industry to go in Europe. That's also big in China. Then we have textiles, we have plastics, we have construction materials. So one by one, all of these big impact industries will get enforced between 2026 and 2030.
Thank you very much. That brings us back to battery dialogue, maybe. So yeah, Rajat, thank you very much for all the introductions. Thank you everyone for the insightful, already inspiring what they do in the society. But yes, coming back to you in terms of the battery. So we understand, collection of critical minerals is of course important, and then we should be making sure that the system functions in the society. But like, I'm sure that when we look at the collection system in general for any kind of resources, it's always tough, right? And then we really need to have the certain schemes, not only by corporations to run as a business itself, but also maybe for a certain level of the material, we actually also need a policy intervention for that. How is India doing that in terms of the policy collaboration for the collection scheme for your sector?
Sure, thank you. And first of all, Sann, I would like to say India also has a digital passport requirement. So that's another area of opportunity for you. So please do come to India and explore the opportunity out there for digital battery passports. In terms of regulation, India has been quite proactive in terms of formulating regulations around collection. I'll maybe specifically talk a little bit about battery waste. We've got what are known as the battery waste management rules, under which extended producer responsibility has been created in India. EPR puts the onus of recycling on the producers in the market, and if not the producers, the importers who are directly trading material and supplying it to consumers in the country. This is a great first step. At least something has been initiated. Where India started giving more teeth to EPR was by actually putting a floor and a ceiling on the certificate price for EPR. So producers have to buy recycling certificates from recyclers, and the floor and the ceiling were pretty much determined by two things. One was cost of collection, and two was cost of processing. If the cost of collection and processing was not viable combined compared to the revenue output that the recycler can get, then that delta had to be bridged by the producers. So the mathematics had worked out. The mathematics has been put out, right? The economics of ensuring that this is done in a profitable manner, and the onus of subsidizing the business of collection and processing has been put on the producers. So far, so good, but this obviously created two different sides in the economy. The recyclers on one side and producers on the other side. No one wants that additional cost. In India, in particular, the producers also tend to run their businesses on razor-thin margins. So every bit of additional cost was impacting the balance sheet. How do we arrive at a solution remains the big question. Obviously, to ensure that the cost of collection comes down, industry as a whole has to come together and set up collection centers, and which is not very easy, right? In a country where we have 300 electronic producers, right? With probably at least 15 producers in every category having a reasonable market share, it never remains easy to get all of them to think in the same manner. So it still is a challenge, but at least the first set of steps have been taken. I would also like to point out that the producers have gone and actually sued the government of India for coming out with a regulation like this, and that is still, the case is still being heard by the High Court of New Delhi. So we have to see what the outcome of the case will be, but while the first set of regulations did come, I wouldn't say the outcomes have been exactly what we wanted.
interesting. So if you have any comments to jump in, please feel free to. But meanwhile, while of course policy side policy can be also function as both, of course, enabler for the market to function properly, but at the same time it can be a disabler as well. And then how are your company specifically within that context, pushing through your business to expand, and how are you, I would say, supporting or yourself as a company as also as an enabler for other sectors, I believe. So how are you functioning in that?
We've tied up with like-minded recyclers, not just within the battery industry, but within the broader, the battery industry itself is very large, right? You've got lead-acid battery, you've got alkaline batteries, and then, of course, you've got the new category of lithium-ion batteries. And we've got different specialists in the country for all the different kinds of batteries. But then we also have ancillary industries in terms of electronic waste and electric vehicles, who also are now becoming a big contributor here. So we've tried to tie up with all the recyclers to form common collection points. We've tried to identify what we call producer responsibility organizations, PROs in the context of India, who we are all trying to enable to become aggregated collectors for us. What we are trying to effect in the country, India again is a very large country with at least 600 million people living in urban India, and then another 800 odd million people living in rural India. So we've tried to divide the country at ward level, where a ward represents 50,000, a population of 50,000 each. And we are at this stage still in very early days, but we are trying to ensure that a common collection point gets created in every ward by the industry, irrespective of the regulations and irrespective of what the producers and the regulations do. Ensuring that each of this collection center actually is run by an entrepreneur and can be run in a profitable manner is the ultimate goal, right? And that can only happen if a variety of different kinds of collection activities happen there, segregation of waste happens there, and then the relevant waste is given to the relevant recycler who has expertise in that particular category of waste also happens there. We deal with metal waste in general, so that is a little bit more easy to deal with than other kinds of waste, because the cost of transportation of metal as a percentage of revenue tends to be on the lower side. So we are probably on the happier side of the collection ecosystem.
Yeah, thank you very much. Interesting point. And then just to also highlight, since we talked a lot about the collection this time, so also in Japan, we have huge issues in terms of the lithium-ion battery collection right now for both, of course, like for the big manufacturing, like car, automotive side, but also for the day-to-day consumer side as well. Because, for example, we just ended the hottest summer here in Tokyo, and during that time, everyone carried out this handy fans, and it has lithium-ion batteries inside. And any kind of electric products, now we see lithium-ion batteries, and then it's really hard to dispose because it's plastics. And then from the general consumer perspectives, it's, you cannot, separate materials by yourself. And then what do we do, right? So then that's why when it comes for the waste collection, when all this, compaction truckers come to collect all this, burnable waste or disposable waste, and then the handy fan or any kind of lithium-ion batteries inside, then the truck itself actually get burnt because of the lithium-ion battery inside. Or even the facilities for incinerators are getting, stopped because of the battery makes all the fire within the facility. So it's actually getting into our day-to-day news. And then we see the issue of how do we make sure that we understand what's inside, which is first of all, quite hard, and then make sure how that collection system gets in place. And then for that, we cannot just walk from the side of collection viewpoint, but how do we design, of course, the policy and system, but also how do we design the product, right? So,
yeah, absolutely, and that hits upon a very critical point. I think globally, probably one of the latest initiatives in the world of recycling, particularly when it comes to lithium-ion batteries, is greater collaboration between producers and recyclers at the product design phase. We need to collaborate there because the recycler knows what will be the easiest way to recycle. The recycler will be able to communicate that to the producer and the recycler have to collectively think about the interest of the consumer in easily segregating hazardous waste, such as battery, from non-hazardous waste. So that collaboration at design level, I think, is fundamental. And I don't think there can be greater emphasis on this point.
Exactly. Yeah. Then that brings back to Karen, because you are definitely coming from the side of, okay, product design itself. And I'd love to hear a little bit more about how you came up with that, your own product design, and how you have been collaborating with the, design side of the system in the end. Yeah.
I think when you're looking at materials, the inspiration for Alterpacks was actually garbage. So it didn't matter if you were first world or third world. I remember my experience in Amsterdam was the stench of garbage in the air because there was a garbage strike going on. And it was very important to actually see that we could be able to use a product that has already gone through the ecosystem at least one time. So our raw material is actually spent wheat that has already been used. And what the manufacturers are interested in is only the juice, the water. And so they are disposing of the wheat. So in our design concept, we have to think at the start of life right to the end of life. And part of it also is coming from Singapore. We are also aware that in fact, 90% of what we throw away gets incinerated. But Singapore is a small nation state, and we also are aware that at least 33% of the global economy does dumping. It's landfills, and not all are very proper maintained landfills, they dump. So in terms of end of life, we had to make sure that it was also a material that was home compostable. And in the design of the material itself, we were also aware that what human nature is used to is a material that is always being benchmarked against plastics. So our biggest enemy is actually the human psyche, that plastics is able to do all of these amazing things, and an eco material will not be able to match up. So in terms of our design, in terms of our start of life, in terms of the supply chain, in terms of the end of life, we had to make sure that this material would not only hold up, but would actually have better functionalities than plastic. So from the very start, we take a material that has been recycled, gone through the ecosystem once, we actually provide new life to it. We do not use any form of virgin materials in our production whatsoever. And then at the end of life, when you dispose of it, you are able to then give new life to the soil. And what was very interesting for us is that with our international certifications from Europe and around the world, including US FDA, Japan is a different kettle of fish. The Japanese psyche required not just the proof of the international certifications. They took the Alterpacks products, they kept it in a dump, in a dumpster for 6 months, because they had to prove that you say it works. I need to see it. I need to see it really works.
So they actually tested.
They tested it, and we are so grateful for them because they dumped it in there, and then they analyzed it. Every month, there was a tracking report that came to us. And by the end of 4 to 6 months, the Japanese company was convinced because they saw it, they had their scientists work on it. And what was really heartening for us is they gave us the scientific information that the compost that came out of it was the highest grade fertilizer they had ever come across. So if you could actually collect it and then you could give it back to the farmers, you actually have a circular solution. So thank you, Japan.
Thank you, Karen. That was very inspiring. And then thank you for that Japanese company who invited us. But yes, you mentioned, okay, so you normally, of course, like we all normally need to kind of, compete against the existing single-use materials or the products. And then when it comes to the alternative solution, normally we actually have challenges of like price competitiveness as well, right? How did you tackle that too?
Yes, I think that's a very realistic question, and it was the very first question that we had to confront, because plastics are ubiquitous. They've also had a 100-year head start. They've been scaling for 100 years. They also have government subsidies, and they do not have an end-of-life reporting, in the sense that for an eco-material, we actually have to get the certifications. We have to prove that it is food contact safe. We also have to ensure that it's got the end of life. Plastics have never had to do that. But what we were able to do with our material when we first started, it was 4 times more expensive than plastics. But through scaling and through our own innovation, we were able to bring the price down. Now it is only 1.5 times more expensive than plastics. So we've learned, because of our customers, that our competitor was not eco-materials. Our competitor was plastics. And now at 1.5 times in the next 3 years, through scaling and through increased innovation, we would be able to get to the price point of 1.1 times the price of plastics by 2029. But more importantly, I mean, you talked about regulation in the first part. We are very grateful to governments for that regulation, because enhanced producer responsibility will actually help rebalance the costs. And that rebalancing will put a much more realistic benchmark with plastic taxes, enhanced producer responsibility. Eco-materials can then have a fighting chance.
Exactly, but actually 1.5 times only is very, very competitive, to be frank, yeah.
Not to a business.
Yeah.
So they count every penny. And we've even had a situation with a very large conglomerate that said to us, how much more expensive is your coffee cup lid to what I'm paying right now? So I said, I match your pricing. You pay 3 cents for your coffee cup lid, which is plastic. I match you, and I'll give you 3 cents. It's like poker. I match you, and I'm calling the cards now. I'm opening up, and I say, I match you at 3 cents. And you know what the conglomerate said? No need to change. You're just going to impact my supply chains. Too much work. So it isn't really a matter of pricing. It is a matter of ensuring that you fit into the supply chain and you give the business as little problems as possible, so that it makes it so easy for them to say, okay, switching is not a problem.
Great, thank you. So now we all sense that, okay, innovators are doing extremely good effort to get into the business, which has been existing for quite some time in the history, and it's really hard to get into the market as usual. But at the same time, like, how do we make sure, as a more of the coalition perspective of whoever we see what kind of transition we actually need to see in the society, and how do we make sure this innovation doesn't just die in the middle way? Right? So that's definitely the challenging question I'd like to put into the floor. But moving forward, Sann, right? So we talked about the end of life, and then now, Karen beautifully mentioned that, start of the life equals to end of life, and then, vice versa, right? So how do we make sure that transparency is kept? And then that's how the transparency also can be influential to, for example, to the business sector, as definitely the good starting dialogue for your service. Yeah.
I completely, we're so aligned in facing these challenges. So it's good to hear very strong words from you, Karen, on this topic. When it comes to the transparency part, it is something that on a collective level we all want, because we want to know what's in our products and we want to be able to hold people accountable. But when it comes to running an actual factory, there are many reasons why transparency might not be so good for your business. If you are creating a very specific lithium-ion battery and you have a recipe for it, that recipe is what distinguishes you from your competitors. So if now all of a sudden there is regulation that comes knocking and says, oh, it's radical transparency, let's just go back into your production process and we will share that information freely, then your competitive advantage is gone. So thinking about it from 2 different perspectives, we wanted to solve that with technology. So the way that we adopt blockchain and getting access to data is how we try to prove or solve that transparency issue. So within that digital technology world, there is a concept called like zero proof, which is especially important working in Chinese supply chains, because as we all know, we cannot export data from China. So it's literally impossible to go into the country, get the data, get it into Singapore, and then create a digital product passport. However, we do need to draw conclusions. So what we set up is a system in which we view the operations, we verify, and that verifiable credential is what we use to make calculations on the product level, meaning that we can still do all the math work needed to calculate that impact, so we can create a proof of impact without having to destroy that competitive advantage or make that available to the public. But in order to get there, you need to cross so many different hurdles, because you need to set up that technical infrastructure. You need to convince all of the supply chain partners that this is a good idea and that it will get you better integrations into the supply chain. The main thing then, circling back to your question about like compliance and regulation, is that for the first 2.5 years of running my company, there was no compliance in place. There was no regulation in place. So our partners, our clients, were frontrunners in circular economy that needed to have a proof of impact on the product level. They needed to prove that working with this material has a better impact throughout all use cycles, as opposed to its toxic alternatives. The moment that compliance took place and started, all of a sudden, this transparency and this traceability went mainstream. It is no longer important if you are creating a beautiful circular product or if you are creating a product that is harmful for the environment. We all need that token, that label. So I think that is where technology and compliance regulation can come together to actually create like a flywheel movement. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That's definitely the insight. But I'd like to also ask two of you to, jump into that conversation, like from your standpoint in your sector and in your, business. Then how do you see the key role of traceability, measurement, and these, maybe measurement sounds more of the, rule making in terms of how to measure the impact, but also like what kind of, traceability or the measurement you see is needed be in the place so that we can, fasten the process of the, transition, or fasten the process of your business expansion, which directly impacts, of course, the circularity transition. So, yeah.
Maybe I have a question for you, and this is something that we are struggling with in our business. Batteries in particular, lithium-ion batteries, particularly those coming out of electric vehicles, it is not fair to send them to a crusher at the very end of life, at the end of first life. They have a second life. They may potentially have a third life before we send them to a crusher. But to send them to a second life or third life, lithium-ion batteries are complicated, right? Particularly the ones that go into electric vehicles. We need data from before. We need to understand what was exactly happening. And I think a classic roadblock that we all come against is the producers' lack of willingness to share that data for exactly the reasons that you outlined, competitive advantages, right? And a few blockchain startups have tried to navigate around that, but have not been successful. So would be very curious to understand, how were you able to get the trust of the producer, particularly in China, to begin with? How did you go about convincing them that their data will be sacrosanct? And yet at the same time, the recycler has the ability to analyze some of that data to determine what exactly is a second life application for this particular battery. This is a problem that we've been confounded with, and we've not yet been able to find a solution. So would be curious to hear your views on this.
Okay. I think there's two answers to the question. One is that we have a very, very diverse team. So whatever market or country we operate in, we always have like local people that speak the language and that can, on the factory level, interact with the people there. So that there is an educational component in it. And I see that as one of the key elements to making this work. Another one is that we don't have to be intrusive in those supply chains. So we can work with data exchange that makes it even easier just to link up the systems and not so much gather a lot of data and just say, here, you process this and you do something with it and make us compliant. So we cross some technological barriers. And then, okay, it's 3 answers. The third answer, I think, would be decisive. We always make sure to partner up with the most powerful partner in the supply chain. So that would be either the economic operator, the owner of the product, or the distributor. They, in a way, in a political sense, they own the supply chain. So the option that the supply chain actors have is either to find a way to collaborate. So we do give full transparency on how data is handled, where it is held and why and for how long. Or they get out of favor with those economic operators. So if the product producer goes into the supply chain and says, we need to get this data from you, most supply chain actors have no idea how to get it. They don't know their data points, they don't know where to get it in their system, and they are in fear of losing their client and therefore their market. So that's the position where we try to say, we're going to go in this direction anyway. We can do that in a safe way, and we can do it in a way that makes you feel trusted. And this is the end result. This will be your end result. So not a perfect solution, but we're getting there.
Certifications are crucial for us as an eco-material. They're both it's an accelerator for us when we work and deal with clients, because that is the first thing they will ask. And just to give you an example, to obtain the certification, for example, TUV Rheinland certification that we got, it took us 9 months to get that certification. So it actually halted our commercialization because we created the product. And for us as an eco-materials company, creating the product is really a proof of concept. It is not the end goal. It allows us to cross geographies, use cases, and industries to show you what the material is capable of. But a crucial factor always is that they need to see the certification. And so they fed our material to earthworms. They threw it into the ocean. They made sure the fish were fed and that they didn't die. They planted it in the ground. And that cost us a lot of money. And it's tens of thousands of euros. In addition to that, we also had to stop our commercialization because we also needed to make sure that it was food contact safe, so there's US FDA certification. But saying that, the certifications become part and parcel of what the industry requires, but they are also held captive by that. So we actually had a distributor who said to us, can you put in paper into your product? And I said, why would I want to put paper into my product? The reason I've created my product is that it's 100% recycled plant fiber, and there's no need to put any paper. He said, if you put in paper, I can say that it's got FSC certification. So I said, why would I want to do that? I'm complicating my life because the product came from a recycled material that was going to be disposed. It's got high temperature tolerance. It's got life cycle analysis. It's got carbon footprint. I'm able to state how much carbon emissions I'm abating. But just to put it in, again, it's the trap of the certification.
Definitely, that's true. So, like, how we design the measurement scheme, or like how do we design the standard, maybe also can really impact the what is valued more, what is less valued, and then how everyone look at the new product, new businesses, anything like. compared to the reality or compared to what's actually is impactful versus what looks like more impactful, right? So
Yes, that's exactly it. And I also find that while we have spawned off a whole new industry of certification and data, it's very important to have all of that. But it's now come to the point where providing the material is having that certification for the sake of the certification.
yeah, that's definitely. So thank you very much. I'd like to also be ready. I'd like to also open up the floor for the any questions for the panelists. I'm sure any direction is okay. I mean, if anyone. Oh yeah. Oh, thank you. So maybe, sir, and then next, yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. This is a really fascinating session, and I'm very grateful to you and to all the speakers. This question is really for Karen, and it's if the material you're talking about really is a very good replacement for plastics that are used now everywhere, how much scale can that material be produced at and still retain all the qualities and that you said of the natural fiber and given how much plastics we are now using and throwing and polluting the world with? So how much of a dent can this new material really make in our battle against plastics?
Thank you for the question. My biggest competitor is the biggest competitor, because human psyche is such that they have become so used to plastics. And they need to see the first competition I have with plastics is not just about cost, it's because it's transparent. And when you go to the supermarket or when you purchase a food, you want to see, touch, feel, poke. My material is opaque. So that's the first disadvantage. The second thing is, in terms of scaling, it is not an issue. We can produce up to 15 million units of this in a month. So the material is an additive. So it can come from agricultural waste. The biggest competition we have is really when we're looking at agricultural waste, and the disposer of that agricultural waste is a food manufacturer who is having a tonner truck come in every hour on the hour and disposing it. I don't know where he's dumping it, but he's disposing it. But the moment I approached them and said that we can use this, it became a valuable commodity. And so we learned about human nature as well as business politics, which is, don't say that it becomes, it's valuable. Just say that I can do something with it. I'm not sure what I can do with it. Maybe if you want to sell it to me, But right now, it adds around 20%, 10 to 20% of our final costs. So can we compete against plastics? Yes, we can, because our functionalities are superior. We spend trillions of dollars on wellness. And yet we forget about the material that we are consuming that product from. Our additive provides existing infrastructure to have this advanced material and a better carbon footprint and a better sustainability impact. But competing against human nature and the plastic industry, and not just plastic, paper industry, is very, very tough. So it's not about whether we can scale. We can scale. But it's whether we can combat against these obstacles that I've mentioned.
Yes, thank you very much. There's a higher hands, please. The gentleman in the middle, yes.
Hi, Noel Pujol from Intralink. I have two questions. The first question is, Karen, you touched upon how certifications can act as an accelerator. I was curious to know what other accelerators there are, specifically for smaller and medium-sized companies that may struggle to change the ecosystem, number one. Number two, what's the outlook for Japan? We mentioned the EU and China regulations driving the adoption of circular economy. What's the outlook for Japan?
So I'll answer the first part because I think the second part is...
Second is more general.
Yeah. So in terms of the accelerator, we've become caught in this trap, actually, which is if you're dealing with an eco-material, the only accelerator you have is your certification to try and prove that you are better, you're safer, your compostability, your end of life, your carbon footprint. But reality strikes home. And your biggest accelerator, price. Because no matter how much I want to save the world, if I can compete with plastics on price, I can save the world. Because no matter what it is for the end business and the customer, they are concerned about price. And then, in addition to that, you have all of these certifications. That's a win-win for them.
Yeah, thank you for the second part, maybe, Sann. Yeah.
Is it for me? Is it for you?
Please go ahead first, yeah.
Okay. So what I see happening is that more and more countries on a country level are waking up to this idea. Circular economy, I feel as a business model has not been developed well enough yet for a mass adoption. So one of the drivers, I guess this is an answer both to your first and your second question, is that price is one of the drivers in a business case. Reusability and therefore decrease of procurement is a second one. Decrease of the mining of virgin materials is another one. So there are many levers in a circular business model that you can use to get that adoption like pushed forward. And you can see that from a systemic change perspective, or you can just see that as a small, medium enterprise that knows that it has more to face and to get over than a traditional linear commodity-based business. So that is one part. Then the second answer as an outsider would be that I have seen so many pushback against geopolitical tensions and developments that is on the small scale, but it's also on the big government scale. So what I feel, and then I answer from purely the digital product passport, I see it as the infrastructure for sustainable international trade. So if we can lock in all those impact metrics on the product level and we make sure that products that are healthier, less toxic or not toxic at all, move through our economies that decide to collaborate instead of going down the linear path or the fossil fuel path, then we can create these strong consortia that both help the SMEs, but then also the international trade system without disrupting it fully. When it comes to Japan, for me, this is just a very open invitation to like hop on board. And this week here, also a deep market research understanding as in how far is the country now and what still needs to happen for this international trade structure to be picked up and to be linked into what's already happening in Asia.
You want to add? Yeah, please.
Just a little bit of perspective on, an opportunity for Japan, particularly with respect to India. India, when it comes to critical minerals and critical mineral recycling, and I think all of us understand critical minerals have become a major geopolitical issue. So India has set its own targets, its own goals. We've got a $4 billion national government mission for critical minerals, and recycling is a very critical part of the critical mineral mission. I believe Japan, being one of the leaders in technology, when it comes to processing of critical mineral waste, has a huge opportunity out in India. By our estimation, there is a $5 billion opportunity for provisioning of equipment for critical mineral processing when it comes via the scrap route or whether it comes via the original route. And that is a straight-out opportunity available for companies in Japan who may be looking to supply equipment to India. The second bit, which I think is where India and Japan, obviously both as part of Quad, have been working together, is an opportunity to collaborate on technology, an opportunity to do joint ventures in this area. The demand clearly is very large in India. The demand clearly is only growing in India. And this creates a possibility for creating more joint ventures and potentially more, possibly even technology royalty that Japan can earn from the opportunities available in India. So in our opinion, this is a multi-billion-dollar opportunity. Given the geopolitical nature of it, it may not be that easy for Indian entrepreneurs to work with China in this particular matter, and I think that is where there's a great place for everyone to come and collaborate. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Maybe I'll add a little bit of my perspective, being Japanese. And then Since everyone's so interesting, I forgot to introduce myself, but I do. But I personally has been working in the waste reduction field for long. At the same time, like I originally worked more with the municipal government, so like local government side. But recently I joined a startup myself as well, which is called EcoMit, which do the collection, sorting, and redistribution of used items. So let's say we collect, let's say, around 1% of what's discarded of the clothes in Japan. So we actually, if you go to like shopping malls and like in apparel store, all the collection box exists, and then most likely the back end of it, we are the one who's serving the collection, right? Then when it comes to the transition of such systems. Now we are working more closely with the business side as a startup to provide collection services. Even we started doing the resale services too, which means that, for example, if the apparel is the one who's, of course, normally they just produce and sell, and then that's it, right? But when we do collect and then we do the sorting, then we bring it back to them, then they can actually sell it twice, right? It's actually an income point, new income point ever. Right? Then like how do we then make sure coming back to the production side of the design and say, okay, so since we make sure we're gonna, sell one product for 3 times, then probably the durability design of the product might change. Yeah? Or probably the cost we can spend for one product might change. Then probably we can get a little, away from mass production, mass sales, mass consumption, and mass dumping. So these kind of like, how do we influence from our side, who's normally, a separate system aside from the production, to influence back to the producer is really the key. And then actually, as you heard, that, there are solutions and there are innovations already happening, but how can we make sure that gets connected to the production side, and then the connection can be done by both coalition. I'm saying this for 3rd time within this panel, but at the same time, of course, the policy support as well in certain level. And then when we look at all this collaboration side of it, well, it's quite hard for a Japanese startup when we look at the domestic market and then say, okay, so these are the potential solution providing spot, then when we try to design that for Japanese market, it's certain scale, but quite limited because transparency between what's customized more into Japanese market versus what can be internationally sold are slightly different. And then that's how we can trap into the service design only for Japanese market sometimes. Then in this field, that's why I see the potential for the collaboration from, especially startup coming from other countries, working together with Japanese market, or, even different startups working together, or maybe, big corporation here in Japan, then we can be more innovative in that sense. So that kind of, cross-cultural, border collaboration is definitely what we need to definitely invite here in Japan. Then that's where I really see the potential. At the same time, for example, even for the resource circulation domestically in Japan, it's also very important to make sure that we keep resources here because we are scarce in terms of resource production side, despite what they have in India, similar to Singapore. But we simply, has been importing and exporting everything, right? So we didn't keep it within the country. So how do we make sure that the circulation happens domestically? But also, we cannot just keep every supply chain closed as well. So how do we make sure that the collaboration, considering the data transparency happening, to make sure that transition or transaction happening within the region? That's also the key for us for the growth from my perspective. But so now we are running out of the time. Thank you very much for very much interesting questions. Yeah, thank you very much. And then I'd like to put the opportunity for the speakers in the end to provide, maybe you please mention the potential areas of the collaboration or any thing that you'd love to ask from the market or anyone in Japan or within the audience, and any like key messages, like how they or all of us can collaborate with you or within your business sector. So maybe from, Rajat, thank you.
Sure, just reiterating, I think the opportunity is very large in India. There are areas to collaborate across the entire critical mineral technology space. There are standards that we can develop together. We can learn from each other a lot. I'm here not just representing my country, my company, but also my country, and would be happy to see and happy to collaborate with anyone who's interested in the broader critical mineral and critical mineral recycling space. So please reach out to me if you think there is something that you would like to discuss. Thank you.
So we are currently actually working with a 13th generation sake company based in Kobe. And they are very interesting. And Japan is actually an invaluable source because the companies, the president of the company has approached us because he wants to move his sake brand, the packaging, onto a new platform for a whole new generation. And so very much like the question about how do we compete against plastics, the competition is really that for the sake company, we had to be very transparent with them and told them, you know, the Alterpacks material is very plain. There's nothing, you can't print colors on it. And he said, I love that. I want it to be stark and plain, and I only want the embossment of my logo. So he is willing to push it forward. And what I see and what I love about Japan is this ability of respect for tradition, and yet this funky way out, thinking outside the box psyche that takes place in the culture. And if you have that, come to me. We would love to collaborate.
All right. To build on that, completely agree. What I would like to leverage on much more is Japan has been one of the early adopters of blockchain and crypto. So it has been very, very long-rooted tradition in thinking about new technologies and how to integrate them into current lifetime economy, etc. I've known for a few years that the only way to scale a circular economy is to add a digital layer. So if that way of thinking about innovation and technology, specifically in blockchain and with encrypted data, can come together with this emerging thinking about circular economy, then I believe that Japan can very uniquely position itself in this field and have innovations that make the rest of the world think, okay, this is what we should have done. So to be a part of that would be an honor, and to be here today as well. So thank you. Yeah.
So thank you very much, and please join me to thank all the panelists, like round of applause. So thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Sakano, and all the speakers. So this concludes the Circular Economy Times Startup. So I would like to send our speaker and moderator with a big round of applause. Thank you very much for the insightful session. Please proceed.